Another thing that happened was, when I was working at the dairy, I wanted to have milk delivered. In order to have milk delivered, they had to run a credit report. And I got to see the credit report. And down at the bottom, there was an inquiry from the IRS. So, you know what they do? They just go look at the credit report. What can they tell from that? They can tell where you live. They can tell what kind of mortgage payment you're making, whether you're current on your mortgage payment, whether you're current on your credit cards, how much you're paying on your credit cards. They can tell where you're working. No? I mean, there's lots they can tell. You know what I thought about that? You ain't seeing anything else. And I shut that sucker down. No more credit report. There's not going to be anything for you to look at. I get fired from the dairy because I insisted that they not do any withholding, and so he fired me. And one of my other buddies, he got in trouble at the same time for the same reason, and he went to get unemployment. And I was like, well, you're going to get unemployment. No, wait a second, I'm going to read that law first, because I'm starting to catch on to this, right? So I have him send me the law, and I get to looking through it. And the first thing it says, it's being done under the police power of the state. Just the sound of that. I don't like the sound of that. Right? And then it says that it's the administration of Social Security funds. I don't like the sound of that either. And then, let's see, you must have a Social Security number in order to participate. Boy, they don't even want to hear from you unless you got a Social Security number. And let's see what else. Here's a thought as I read through that law. Guess who was not subject to withholding taxes? Or withholding with respect to unemployment insurance. Those that were paid daily and in cash. One of the reasons I paid attention to that is because in Leviticus 19:13, it says, it's the law, right? It says, you shall not hold the workers' wages overnight. Right? When Yeshua was telling the story about the landowner, it was time to do harvest, he went to town, he hired some workers in the morning, he hired some more at noon, he hired some more at 3 o'clock or whatever, and then at the end of the day, he paid them all. Right? Now, look what you're doing there. You're restarting your employment each day. All right? In other words, if an employer does that, if he pays you at the end of the day, you might not come back tomorrow. Tomorrow is a brand new incident. Right? And what you've done is you've shifted it over to what George Gordon calls, when you start doing it on get paid daily, you've shifted it into quid pro quo. Something for something. A day's labor for a day's wages. Right? When you let your employer stretch it out, first you work 2 weeks, then you wait 1 more week, then I pay you. You've changed it into specific performance over time for profit or gain. And then your employer, who takes the EIN number, employer identification number, right? He takes his funds down, he puts them in a bank that's federally charged pursuant to the United States Code. And then it becomes the bank's asset. And the only way anyone can get back to that asset is by way of what they call choices in action. You might be able to walk in and cash a check. You might be able to walk in and make cash withdrawal. And there's certain ways. You might be able to use an ATM machine. Well, in certain ways you can get it. You pick. Right? But as soon as you went there and got that money, you know what it gave you? It gave you a source of income within the United States. What is the United States defined as? Washington, D.C., Guam, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands. That's the United States. As defined in the tax code. Okay? As I start figuring that out, don't do business with banks. Not with your Social Security number. Because they'll do to you what they did to me. They showed up at the count when they were chasing me around, and they chased me around, and they put this notice of levy in there, right? And they sent one to us. My wife's like, look at this. They're going to levy our account. And I was just like, Father? Yeah. Okay. I said, just go down and withdraw it. So she went down and just took it out. And now that brings me to a story. I know nothing about law when I'm starting this journey. Right? I didn't know anything about banks or source of federal of funds within the United States and any of that. Right? All I did was I was like, all right, Father, what now? What now? What do you want me to do? And he's telling me, just park the cars in the garage. Don't take that one car out. Don't get a new license plate for that car. Just leave it in the person's name and it's in. Withdraw the money from the bank. I got fired from the dairy on this day, and a week later, the notice of levy showed up at the dairy, and they didn't get a cent. So, in fact, the whole thing over the span 2 years, where they were chasing us around, they interviewed our neighbors, they talked to us on the phone, they came and knocked on the door. I didn't get the baseball bat out, but they were knocking, and it turned out neither one of us could answer, and they didn't get a cent. And then we met up with NCBA. Maybe some of you remember those guys, National Commodity Barter Association. And they knew how to do FOIA requests, and they helped us put in one that asked for the investigative report by the IRS agent that was chasing us all around. And so here it was, his handwriting. He's handwriting this thing, and it spanned 2 years, and it showed that every time the father was saying to me to zig, he was zagging. Right? The father says, don't take that car out of that person's name that he bought it from. Right? And over here, he was checking the DMV looking for vehicles that we own. And he's writing down, there's cars in the driveway, but they don't own them. And then, he says, numerous levy attempts. So he sends out all kinds of levies to all these places, and I didn't work with them anymore. And so, at the very end of this 2-year thing, the very last entry that he wrote in there, I recommend this account be closed. I think I've overworked it. So, let's see. So then I started going to, I met this group of guys, and we were having, and girls, Rose Bromberg was one of them, we were having long meetings on Colfax Avenue in Beverly Hills. And people would come to the law meeting, and they would describe these knockdown, drag-out. The IRS is seizing my house. There's a lien on my house. They took all the money out of my account. They levied my wages, and I'm living on $400 a month. And just hair-curling stories about all this. And I'm looking at what they're saying, and I'm looking at me. And I was like, Father, what's the difference? Why are these people having all this happen to them? And it just seems like it just keeps happening to them. I mean, they keep coming back over a year's time talking about everything happened. And over here, it's just like my problem went away. And I had a vision. And in my vision, there was a shepherd and his flock. And he was moving them from one pasture to another. And as he was moving them, some of the sheep that were kind of sick and weak began to trail behind the group. And so they kind of get strung out and farther and farther behind. And the lion would come up, and it was an easy pick. You just get one of the very tail ones and have lunch. And then I had another vision. In this vision, there was a pasture of grass. And then on the edge, there was woods, and the shepherd was out in the middle of the pasture and watching the flock as they grazed. The lion came up to the edge of the woods, and he roared. And the sheep had 2 reactions. Some of the sheep said, get close to the shepherd, he'll save us. And some of the other sheep went, it's a lion! Run for it, save yourselves! And they just took off running.